Um, Brett, Brett, are you able to scribe today?
Yes, I
Awesome.
do.
Okay,
And do you want to
cool.
share screen?
Yep, I am just. The controls are really terrible when you are screen sharing.
Yeah,
Excellent.
they are. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
correct,
um,
correct.
can everyone see my screen with the agenda for today's meeting? So
Yes.
25th of the 3rd. Great. I should introduce myself. I am Marika Carr. I'm from Hello Connect. I'm stepping in as a new co-chair as part of the FHIR Working Group. I've been around since I guess we started the Spark program a few years ago, through the development of core and patient summary, and have been also pretty active in AU base, which is why I'm in the FHIR Working Group. Um, it's probably all you need to know about me, but if I bugger anything up in my first session chairing, please feel free to come off mic and sing out. So just wanted to welcome everyone. First things first, this is the agenda for today's meeting. Does anyone have any additions or changes for the agenda items?
If you hit refresh, you'll see I added one.
Awesome.
Could you zoom
Uh,
in one more for me? I have a tiny
Yeah,
screen, not a big one. Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you.
yeah,
So good.
doing a weird thing where it won't let me scroll, but the next meeting plans are basically changing it for daylight saving. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So Brett's items, family member history is here. All right. Hearing no changes, the first item on the agenda is just approving the minutes of the last meeting. So we've got 3 sets of minutes to approve, which I think have been circulated by Brett. So I've got them here so we can see. I don't know what that's open so far. First set of minutes, we can see we go all the way down. So that's there. This is on the 2nd, sorry, the 11th of February. And then we've also got the 18th of February. So we've got our recording and then our minutes, nice and detailed. Cool. And then we've also got our face-to-face meeting with, let me go through minutes here. Does anyone need more time to review any of the minutes that I have showed? Hearing nothing, I am happy to entertain a motion to approve any of the minutes, whether it be all
I would,
together or individually.
I would
Is
like to
that?
move we approve. Yeah, I would like to move that we approve all of them.
Yep. Just looking for a second.
I'm happy to second, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie. All right. Now I'm just going to launch the poll for the approval of the minutes. Cool. That should be there. Great. Just give everyone a moment longer. All right. I think that's everyone's voted. So we have got 7 affirmative, 3 abstain, oops, which you should be able to see. 7 affirmative, 3 abstain. So we've passed and approved all the minutes there.
I'm a plus one in the chat because I can't vote. So
Thanks, Brett.
no
So
worries. Cool.
8 affirmative, 3 abstain then for the minutes. Awesome. All right, on to updates and news. I think the first item is all yours, Brett. So HSS
Sure.
Australia ballot update. Do
Uh,
you want to steal the chair?
Look, it's only going to be brief. I don't think there's much to show. The
Yep.
yeah, the AUPS ballot has finished. So that will be going to reconciliation with the AU core work group. Other than that, I think we might just call the numbers. So there were 57 signed up. We had 34 affirmatives, 11 negatives. So there's a few issues there to resolve. I don't know, Danielle, do you have anything else to say? Anyone else from
I do.
ACOR?
There's also some affirmative feedback, not just negative
Yeah,
feedback. And of course, we
sure.
will look at all of it, not just the negatives. And I think I want to just double check with you, Brett, later about the through rate of voting. I think it wasn't too bad, but I think it might have been a little bit lower than the last ballots. The sign up numbers were really good. Um, and but I think in terms of the voting percentage, and I'm just going to the page now, I somehow closed my browser. Oh,
Yeah,
because my system updated.
yeah. I've got 78% of the participants voted.
Yeah, we'd been hitting about
So,
somewhere between 82 and 85% for the August ballots. So it's a little bit lower. And, I don't know whether why in particular. I just wanted to raise that item. Still
no
good
worries.
numbers,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, so I mean, we've passed. You need to get above the 60%
yeah.
approval rate of the people who vote across both negative and affirmative. And the approval rate is at the moment, without any withdrawals, something like 76, I think. Still trying to navigate to the graphic that shows all of this. But yeah, so like it's passed. We're now going to work through reconciliation. I think the number of issues I mean, the number of feedback is not bad. We've also got some feedback from international, which is nice. And everything looks kind of on track to publish when we expected, or maybe even a week or two earlier. Who knows? But like we're on track, so it's good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that update, Brett and Danielle. The next item I assume is also one of yours. It's between your names. Just a face-to-face meeting summary for the FHIR Working Group meeting, I'm assuming on the 10th of the 3rd.
Yeah, so I know there had been some concerns about some of the lead-in to the meeting around tickets and availability and things, but I will say that on the day it went really well. And HL7AU and the agency did a great job in making sure the day went smoothly, and we had double, so more people than are on this call, frankly, in person. So that was really good. A lot of it was more governance stuff. So a bit more around how are we going forwards with the firework group. We also looked at the release of the AU Core R2 Inferno test kit, approved the AU Core R3 PSS, which has gone to the board for endorsement, and we did one kind of material thing, which is we did a revisit of the no known meds, or Michael Lawley's not on the line, but just for the minutes, the known nomads, to revisit the previous decision in line with the request from AU Core and patient summary. And that got approved. So it was both revisited and a decision was made to stay in alignment on that. If anyone wants to go into more detail on that, I can, but it's in the minutes.
I think minutes on this page. Sorry, the 10th of
Yeah.
the easy to find.
Yeah, so it was a good day. And yeah, I really appreciated the work that HL7 Australia and the agency did to organise that event.
Thanks, Danielle. While you were speaking, I think the next two items are also yours.
They completely should not be, but I can't see Richard on the line. So, okay, Connectathon breakouts for Firework Group. So the identifier one, I think Richard might come later, but it's what we'd been talking about around what do we do with NOI? And how does that work? It was a fantastic breakout that was heavily attended, and they've solved it. Basically, everyone came to total agreement in the room. It was amazing. And so we're about to see a number of change requests. If you want to know the details, there are links in there. And Richard has passed that on to Uday. Uday, is there anything
Yes.
that you wanted to say before we kind of, as an
Think
update
of-
on that?
Yeah. Yes. I got a presentation together over there. If you can see that. Yeah. So it was a great session in the Connectathon, and everybody was on board to do those changes to which leads to that fire identifier to be classified to have that fire identifier dot type to be clear according to the PIOs and all the identifiers which are in AU base. Uh, I have a presentation together if you want to have a look and
I think we'll go
What we
through
might
that
do-
later. Yeah.
yeah, sure,
we'll just
not a problem.
move through in order, and then because I know that there are a few things that we wanted to get out of the way
Yeah,
first.
sure.
I think the next topic, though, will need to be Brett, because I wasn't able to make
Yep.
the ID publisher one, but it sounded
Yep.
incredibly important from the reports I heard coming out.
Yeah, there was a good it was a good session. I think we got had a few people who were working on OGs turn up and other interested parties. So it was good to have that. Graham attended and ran us through a bit of the state of the world as per usual. Some IG publisher changes around dependency resolution and some other changes expected. So yeah, so I think it was it's all minuted to the details of that are available as well. I'm not sure where they are actually,
From the
but
ID
yeah,
authoring breakout, who did the minutes?
uh, Shelley did.
Shelley.
Huh. How
So
lovely
we
of
do
her.
have,
Okay, cool.
yeah, so we've got a bit of we've got a summary of that available. I'll find the link and add that into the minutes as well. Yeah, so there's a few things Graham covered. Yeah, so I think yep, and the only other probably notable thing was FHIR R6 is still under development and is unlikely to be finished until next year. It's probably a big ticket item.
Awesome. From the changes in the IG publishers session, is there anything that we need to be starting to think about doing as a community just to get IG publishers in Australia up to date beyond, I guess, then looking at the minutes from that meeting?
Nothing pressing. I think we just need to digest some of the changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was some stuff to think around about dependency and pinning
Yeah.
as well. There were some new features added to allow. We've had a set of QA issues around unpinned referencing, and I think there's some answers to that to make that our approach more normal. But yeah, nothing I don't think that is particularly impactful, but we will need to review and do some checking.
Yep. Well, thanks, Brett. The next thing we just, as an update, we've taken a poll on Zulip and Brett circulated that as well. Zulip is taking forever to load. I can tell you the options were either keep the same meeting time, Australian Eastern Standard Time, or change the meeting to adjust daylight savings time. Based on this, it looks like the plan is to keep the meeting time the same, so 10 to 11:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, and not change it with daylight saving changes. I'll close this poll after the meeting, but just heads up, we're keeping the same meeting time. That's one thing there. All right, and then if there are no more updates, we can head into our 7 scoping discussion. So the bulk of the discussion today is basically around starting to think about what should be in AU-based R7. I'm first cab off the rank, just, oh, sorry. Yeah, that's correct, Danielle. So it will be 10 to 11:30 going forwards in Australian Eastern Standard Time. Cool. So I'm first cab off the rank. Basically, this is something that I surfaced or raised initially in the end of 2024, paired with, I guess I had a request for better code systems for PBS and MBS. This is the Jira ticket that I will just place there. Oh. Navigating this is slightly more challenging. This is the Jira ticket. Just a little bit of background on it. Basically, what I was looking for is a way to communicate this doctor has a preference for this, like this is their default Medicare benefit scheme item number for billing. And we were going to build that out as a custom extension as part of our facade. And I was looking for a existing system for Medicare that I could pass so that it would be standardized. And I did a lot of digging, and basically the nuts and bolts of it were the only official published anything from ADHA or anyone that I could find were explicitly pointing to Service Australia modified systems, and the modified systems basically are the codes for PBS or MBS padded with leading zeros. And it looked like basically I put a poll out, and it looks like some people are using padded, some people are using unpadded unpadded codes, just depending on what they get and what is required by the system that they're using. We all know we're talking about Medicare item numbers. The PBS item code we resolved, so we removed the OID that linked explicitly to padded codes. So the current PBS item code value set and code system that are published as part of AU-base can be used for either padded or unpadded codes without preference, which basically means that everyone is now using that correctly. But there's no equivalent for a general value set and code system that can be used for MBS. And my proposal, like ours is not from a billing lens, ours is an extension that we're wanting to communicate a specific thing, but I know that it's Medicare. Like I know that plenty of other people are using it. I think if I look at my initial, this is from last year, and it's taking forever to load. If I look at, it's not here. Not here. Take my word for it. Yeah, still not here. Take my word for it. When we polled the community, it looked like a bunch of implementers were using either the OIDs that were pointing to a padded system, or had made their own URLs for MBS for a system code. And basically, I think it's something that would be incredibly valuable, regardless of the use case, for us to standardize on in AU-base as terminology to then be used more widely in all implementations. Yeah, that is what I was trying to get to. It just wouldn't load. So that's what's up here. It's just not loading. Oh, it's loading for you. Okay, cool. We did poll the community, and sorry, Brett.
It's just magic, don't worry.
It's all right. I'll take your magic. So we don't need to talk about the PBS because we resolved that part of the Jira, but basically we know that some people are using just random MBS domains, so something there. I have also seen bespoke, like bespoke systems, just exploring. Some people are using the URL, sorry, there's a bit of a mismatch, and I think it's something that we're all talking about the same thing, regardless of whether it's padded or unpadded. It should exist. I'm happy to take any questions.
Sorry, can I just say that Graham is very against code system stubs in the ecosystem. They trip up all sorts of terminology servers everywhere. And it's actually HL7's terminal THO have moved away from creating stubs for external code systems. They've actually gone to using Confluence pages now to get the metadata. So I'm just wondering why we would go against what's HL7 International's policy.
Can I just say that sounds like when we actually try to solve the JIRA rather than just identifying what might be in the scope of R7?
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, I'll butt out
I
now.
think it's completely valid question, and I think it's one of the things that we'll have to work on, but I think that's not now.
I think, yeah, there's a number of things like even the URL allocation and where does that come from? Because it is a Service Australia item.
Yeah,
Will
I
have to
think that's
be
where
part of it. Yeah, but I think as far as the ticket goes, I think this is pretty important and it's been around for a number of years. And there's been definitely people doing things already. So I think it's pretty important that we try and progress it.
Thanks, Brett. I would tend to agree. I think the fact that we're not using the same thing to talk about something that should be shared, the same set of codes, is a bit silly. All right. Well, in terms of R7 discussion, Danielle and Brett, do I need to look for motions here, or are we happy to just sort of generally agree this is a good idea? It sounds like the very valid concerns that have been raised are about implementation details, but there aren't any concerns that have been raised about the utility of this or its place in base.
I think the approach we took last time, and that worked, was we asked people to speak to what they wanted to undertake in base. And if anyone had a concern that it wasn't appropriate for base, that got kind of raised then and there. But otherwise, I don't think we voted on anything because, the people are here, they're interested to do the work, so we'll just let that play out. And from what I've heard, it sounds very relevant to base.
Great. All right. Well, given that and hearing nothing against this particular one, Jane, we are very keen to hear about some of your extensions. Would you like me to make you a co-host so you can share?
Thanks, Marika. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah. We're actually going to defer ours until next meeting because my party's not able to join today.
No, that's perfect. Okay, thanks, Jane. So moving on to the next item, Danielle, same question. Would you like to be made a co-host so you can share?
No, I just want to speak to some items. So I'm going to be representing AU Core and patient summary. So one of the items for R7 has already been, I guess, agreed around no-known meds. So that's in there. In terms of AU Core, actually, I'll back up slightly. At this point in time for AU Patient Summary R1, we're not expecting anything further, but given ballot closed on Friday, we're still going through and checking what all the requests from the community are. If anything comes out of that, we might bring that forwards, but AU Patient Summary is going to depend on the already published version of base, so I really wouldn't expect too much change from that. So from AU Core, we are going to be requesting reviews of some of the existing base profiles. In particular, AU core composition is on the table, and that will I think has a number of implications for AU base composition, which doesn't do much at the moment. And we need to look at the scope, and probably really I think the focus of discussion so far has been really around terminology of things around value sets for document type, basically. In relation to that, we're also looking at document reference in AU Core. There's some consideration of whether or not we would therefore ask for an AU-based document reference profile. So that's possible. And I think part of that, there's a bundle that's being considered, but we're not considering bringing in a bundle profile into base. That doesn't make sense at this point in time. One of the other things that we would be looking at is both medication dispense and diagnostic report are also part of the projected kind of R3 scope of AU Core. They have profiles in AU base, so I think we would be looking to review the base content and see if there are any changes that we need from that. I think that's everything from AU Core, unless other people on the line who are part of the project. Am I missing anything? No, I don't think so. I think that's the current expected kind of impact from AU Core that we know now. We've just gotten started, so there might be a few other change requests that come through.
Oh, Danielle,
Yeah.
they're doing AU Core endpoint as well, right? As
Yes, that's right. Endpoint
it's
is,
under, yeah.
and I guess we would need to consider whether or not a base profile makes sense. I'm dubious, but
Yep.
it
Yep.
might be something that comes out from AU Core. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Cool. Well, it sounds like there's a fair bit coming up for us to watch out for. Be good. Uday, we're back to you. You've got a
Sure.
presentation. Would you
Yeah,
prefer?
a short one. Yes, please. Can you allow me
Yeah.
to share?
Yeah, actually, it's probably easier if I allow you.
Oh, yeah.
I've made you a co-host, so you can actually share, and then that way you can control.
Okay, sure. Thank you. All right. Can you see my screen? No, not yet.
No, we cannot.
Now? Is it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There we go. It's starting to come.
Starting to come. Ah, cool.
There we go.
All right. Agency has nominated to do some changes in AU base and core regarding the identified type AU code system and other changes related to the profiles of identified data type profiles, basically. So as you all know, there's a FHIR identifier profile, which is used to script more profiles in HL7 AU base. There are many identifier data type profiles like PIO, HSPO, HPIO, and so on. And there is a element called identifier data type, which is used to classify the kind of identifier together with the code. It's at the FHIR 4 version. Use of identifier type, as you all know, provide it gives a representation in HL7 v2, a code to represent that type, and it determines the namespace of the identifier as well. Like basically in HL7 v2, a type element type value is used to determine what sort of identifier it is coming into the V2 system. It also distinguishes between variant identifiers in the same namespace, like such as DVA card, DVA number in HL7AU base, where we have different colors of DVA cards, but it is differentiated only with the type, not with the system. And further to that, there are other clusters of identifiers with little known namespaces, like a local dispense identifier, which is only got a type, not a system value in base. This is the current situation in HL7AU base. All HL7AU identifiers, profiles, mandate a nominated identified tab value in the data type profile, which is determined by the AU extended code system in the HL7AU base IG itself. We think this mandate should continue. It differentiates clearly what identified type it is. We can see and determine what sort of identifier is coming into the system by seeing the type and together with the system as well. NOI, which is the one which we are interested in. Recently, we have put up a FHIR IG for Health Connect provider directory, which is having where we created identifier data profiles for HSPO, which is a national identifier, which is determined just previously into the legislation, I believe. So we thought of using the NOI type in for the HSPO system as HSPO identifier as well. However, it's determined that it's in Connectathon and various other meetings that having a different identifier type values for HPIO, PIO, and HSPO and HAE instead of using NOI as a common one, which for HPIO, PIO, and HSPO as well. And as you see, its identifier system is the identifier system value is coming from either from the value it starts with, which is 8000362 or 8000364. This pattern can be continued to allow more kinds of identifier to use NOI as type. But however, it was decided not to pursue this path, basically, which is having a different identifier type for every kind of every type of identifier which is in HL7AU base. So we engaged with the community, and we had a good discussion, as we have spoken about before, in HL7AU Connectathon in Sydney, and everybody in the meeting thought that that's a good idea, which we need to pursue, and we have for that purpose we also created a number of JIRA tickets and did some branches which are in HL7AU base, ready to get it reviewed and get merged into the HL7AU base branch repository as well. And further to that, actually, what we are thinking of, apart from giving each kind of national identifier its own value, we are also thought of, I think, HL7AU core, the working group, thought of having that identifier values in the 6 point as a draft snapshot as 6.1, but on the way to R7, basically, which is in the future. That's about it for now. Actually, So that's me.
Great, thanks, Uday. Did anyone have any questions for Uday at all? That seems like a really nice summary from the changes that have come out of the Connectathon breakout.
Just a comment. I think it'd be good
Yep.
for people to have a look at have a look at the tickets about what was proposed. But I think the discussion was quite good consensus as to how to proceed. So I think those tickets reflect that. So I think and it's also this is essentially finishing off the two new identifier types. Will be able to be finished and added, and also we'll do some retro work on some of the other stuff. So I think it's a useful thing supporting the HCAPD project plus having a data type profile. So I think it's a good move.
Is there an easy way to find those particular jurors, the relevant jurors? Have they been linked in your presentation today?
It's not in the presentation, but I can
Yeah.
put those links in the chat here.
That'd be good.
If you
I'll
yeah,
put them all in the minutes. Yep.
yeah.
That's
There's
Yeah,
a
in fact,
conference page.
could you drop all the links in the chat and I'll put them all in.
Sure. I can drop
Thanks.
the conference page there as well, and together with
Yep.
the tickets as well. Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
yeah, cool.
everything you've got. Sounds great.
Yeah, perfect.
Alrighty. So that is a summary of changes to identifier type, particularly for the provider directory. Brett, I think you're next up with family member history.
Cool. I thought I'd bring it up again at the last minute. So this is essentially there's a ticket there, which is was one that was ticket there which was one that was deferred back in 2024. So that's been sitting there for a while. Hasn't got much traction. But I think I'm very keen to get a draft profile together. It's going to be pretty simple, just with some terminology bindings, which would have to be agreed. So I think this is something that a basic profile is pretty achievable. There's existing terminology we can use. So I think it would be more just getting it drafted and through the committee to have it there as something to work with. I'm hoping it's not too controversial, but that will remain to be seen. That's about all. I think it's a very useful item to have. I know some systems implement this information as part of their data. And it's a very useful decision support entry to have to help do risk classification and things like the RACGP Red Book and preventative care stuff.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, does anyone have any other comments or questions for Brett on family member history and reviving the Jira ticket?
I do. Sorry, I'm just still finding the React. Is there is there a project that might use this like in the upcoming time frame?
I expect not.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think there is a priorities question. That's always been the thing. Yeah,
I think it's probably less priorities for me, and that's
yeah, yeah.
okay because I was interested to know if there was like an implementation or a project or like a care sector that was driving this. Yeah.
I think it's something that we've looked at mapping in our implementation, but again, it's come down to priorities and it hasn't necessarily met that threshold to start mapping and working on it. But in the future, it's probably something that we would need to do, but I don't. We don't have enough demand behind it for me to commit concretely to that being something that we're doing soon. Oh, so
I've got Heath's content there, and yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at too. Is I think it's just putting those terminology um guidance in place. Yeah.
mm,
So really that ticket covers it. So it's really like two bindings on two of the elements, and that was pretty much all there is to say. And some so hopefully people can like people the ask would be for people to review that content of those value sets and see if it makes sense.
which if you're willing to put up a draft seems relatively
Yeah.
achievable. Great. Well,
I think I've got a draft in a branch somewhere actually already, but it's but yeah, because I've been sitting there for a while. But yeah,
yeah.
I think too, like before we kind of would kick this off, I think there's a few people with questionnaires that need this information as well, so I'll try and round them up.
Mm, mm, good. Are there any other comments or questions for Brett on this either? No, nothing in chat. Thanks for your comment on that, Heath. I agree. Ah, great. Medi Records already is. So, Heath, to clarify, does Medi Records already have a profile of family member history?
Correct. Yep. And so the relationship one is the clinical condition is using the clinical condition from NTCS, while the relationship binding is a Medi Records value set. So it's using the same code system, I believe, that you're recommending, which is the V3 roll code one. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it would just clean that up from that perspective, but it's very much aligned with what you're proposing already.
Yeah, cool.
Great.
That's even better.
Yeah, that probably answers questions about use as well a little bit. Yeah. Thanks for that, Danielle. So Danielle's just said it's both SNOMED and V3 roll code. Great. So those were all of the items for discussion. We are quite ahead of time. Does anyone have any other left field items that relate to the R7 discussion that they would want to speak to now? Yes, yeah.
I'm okay with Heath going first.
You go.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
you go.
All right. So there's a few that we I think need to look at. As well as I guess obviously there are people on the line who might have joined to speak to some things but have not that aren't directly on the agenda. So I'm okay with them going as well first, or I can do some general AU base business. Maybe I'll do the general AU based business first. There's two issues that got raised from Graham that look relatively significant, looking at gender identity and the work that we'd done on the terminology for that. So I think we need to look at and address those items, whether we change or say no change. I think we need to get through those JIRAs in AU base R7. And I think, Brett, you know what those item numbers are for the purpose of the minutes.
Yep, that's good. I'll reference them. Yeah, they've been sitting there since a while ago.
Yeah.
The third. So I think, and that's pretty achievable, I think, too. Yeah.
There's also that, so on Australian address profile, there's a HL7AU extension for address identifier. And since we did that, there is oh no, hang on, it's no fixed address. We've got an extension. We've had one for that for ever. It's almost like the first extension we did in AU base. But there is now a no fixed address extension in the HL7 International Extensions Pack. So we need to add, looking at that and considering whether we deprecate Australia's extension or what how we should handle that into AU base R7. So those are the three items I think that we have to, just as custodians of AU base, consider.
They all seem pretty reasonable. Does anyone have any questions, comments for Danielle? Then, Heath, you and Danielle were fighting for Mike.
Yes, I added a item onto the R7 scope development page, which was around some additional guidance for AU base medication request. So I'm working on a prescription history project at the moment, and I think it would be valuable for us to, it's not about prescribing, it is just about prescription history. And there's a few use cases there that I've recorded that things other than prescription histories, but being able to record a new prescription, perhaps in an encounter record, maybe recording a repeat authorization as part of it, maybe a dispense or a pharmacy encounter record, and also around nursing home medication charts, actually recording those. So in particular, I'm looking at which intent codes that might represent the original, which intent code should be used for a repeat authorization so that we can distinguish between the two. And also with repeat authorizations, there appears to be a need to be able to record the number of times that the medication has already been dispensed when there are repeats. So, and finally, the status, just some guidance around the status when we are trying to reconcile a prescription history against dispensing status. So what's the status when the first supply has been done? Or if we don't know whether it has been dispensed. So when we're doing something like a patient summary, what should we actually be recording as the status of that medication request in those situations, and whether when we do know that all of the supplies have been filled, should we actually update that status of the medication request as well in those scenarios?
That sounds pretty useful. Danielle, did you say that you had thoughts on some of that?
No, I have a new scope thing that I forgot that is sparked. Whoops. But I'm happy for other people on the line to go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does anyone have any comments for Heath at all? So that's on the R7 scoping page, which I can't remember exactly where it is.
I just put a link in the
Thank you.
comments.
I was about to call out for help, but so this is a page that exists that is intended. Actually, I don't need to copy it to chat. It's already in chat. This is a page that exists basically for items that we're interested in as a committee to put into AU base. I think from my understanding, anyone can add whatever they want here. Obviously, things need a person who's happy to lead it to get done. So if there's not someone who's happy to lead a thing, it's unlikely to get done, is the only thing I'll say. But otherwise, members of the committee are more than welcome to add things here, and then we can talk about it in upcoming FHIR working groups. FHIR working group meetings. So we can see his proposal there as well.
Heath, I got a question for you about that one, about the medication request one. So there's a project going on, right? So are you we probably either need people from that project, or were you representing what they're thinking? That would be super helpful for the medication request discussion, because we don't necessarily have the bodies that
so I'm
are interested. Yep.
I'm representing it as of today, And also, so this is without my Spark hat on or any other
Yeah,
hat. This is actually in the context of that project, which is it's a Fred IT project. And the intent is that once we get beyond into actually working, they will actually provide bodies to
okay, cool.
argue the case, so it's not just me
Yeah, yeah,
arguing it.
yeah, that's good because it's like yeah, coming presenting what the idea is, and yeah,
Yeah.
so we can just go. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's good. Cool. Thanks.
Great. Also a great way to let people know that this page exists if they weren't already aware, and it's somewhere that you can add things to. I can see Danielle's commented, which is something that can stay in the comments. Oh, right. And David has also commented.
I was in the wrong group. Sorry about that. Danielle sorted me out.
Great. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, David. All right. So I think, are there any other, I think Danielle, you're the last person. Oh,
I was, but I think also the e-requesting work group, I know I know the work's continuing on e-requesting, and there's also some other projects coming in. I don't know if we could get an update from any of the co-chairs about some of the potential topics for BASE that might come through in the next kind of 8 months.
is there anyone from the e-requesting working group that could speak to that on the
I
line?
think there is. Oh, wait, it's me. Next 8 months, that's a long time. I don't think have that insight as of yet to know what potentially is the requirement. We may know once we start actively meeting.
Okay, so
Could
a bit of a
could
watch
I?
this space.
Yeah, can I ask about there's a couple of past tickets around coverage and some financial stuff that came through from me requesting originally. I don't know how they're ever going to get resolved unless we can
Oh,
get
you're
people
talking
that,
about, Brett, I think in particular about claiming.
yeah.
Was that right?
Yeah, there's a coverage one as well, which kind of requires some more knowledge.
Would this
Um,
be the one that you're talking to?
yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, and there is a claiming one as well, like Danielle said.
Would those still be, and obviously you can't commit to this, Andy, as you've said you're still meeting on
Uh,
things. Do you reckon that would potentially be a priority for you requesting R2?
It wasn't recognised as a priority, but we can relook at those when we start meeting for R2. I can have a look for the payments tickets.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I think it's even in the specific scope of your use, articulating exactly what you need. And then, because I think it's a broader topic in general, the whole financial class kind of coding and things. But if at least we can describe what your requesting needs, we might be able to nail down those ones.
Yeah.
Cool, cool.
All right. Um, all right. Thanks for the update that will be updated, Andy. Um, anyone else want to contribute to the I7 discussion? Anything that's popped into their brains or that they've joined the line to discuss, bring to us?
I think I'll jump into what we're expecting coming out of the encounter kind of stuff from Sparked, while I remember it, because I'd forgotten before. Um, so we've been reason for encounter and thinking about the kind of information you need to exchange to support information from a specific encounter as opposed to stuff like patient summary, which is more of like a longitudinal view, has been some of the focus around discovery pieces and what is quite relevant to share there. There's no HL7AU project yet. And it might not be a separate FHIR IG, it might be work that we bring through AU Core or other FHIR IGs, but there's definitely some things that we're starting to see come through. So I'm kind of expecting their terminology, particularly around encounter. So things around modality, and re-looking at things around like service type and some of the categorization of encounters and what is useful for people to serve as the ability to discover information around a patient's history of encounters and what is it that you want to know about that. So I think it's at this point really heavily terminology focused through some joint workshops between the clinical group and then looking at what would be potentially a project focused group for that. So yeah, encounter several value sets I'm expecting might be what we put forwards.
I think too that'll all have to play out in a world where there's a terminology working group as well. So we'll have to, like, obviously we want to know how to use them and make sure they're suitable anyway. But
True, but that
yeah,
I think applies equally to all the
everything. Yeah,
terminology suggestions we made. I
sure.
don't think there's anything special about encounter
No.
terminology changes.
Mm.
I'm not actually. I might throw it to you, Heath, because you were working with me at the last kind of sparked face-to-face encounter content. Besides terminology, maybe around encounter, is there anything else that we could forecast is a likely change in AU base?
Off the cuff, nothing is coming to me. It was probably well, it was the mode of modality was the one.
Yeah, modality, service type,
Yeah,
categorization.
yeah. It was
Those
these
were the
value
things that really
sets.
came through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not seeing anything. We're not. So it was a really good workshop, but and from that we didn't hear any like new things, like things that weren't fire native elements. So I'm not currently expecting us to try for any extensions. I think it's all the profiles we already have in AU base. It's like encounters, it's things around meds and allergies and things like that related to the information specific to the encounter. Yeah, so I think it's just terminology basically for encounter specific info.
I mean, the reason for encounter might be something that, I mean, we've got a reason code, but I think some guidance around how that's used and whose perspective the reason for encounter is perceived.
Mm.
So it's a bit tricky.
Not insurmountable though. Great. Well, are there any other questions, comments on encounters about what Danielle's raised? No, hearing nothing. I'm gonna ask again. Anyone have any other off the cuff additions to the R7 discussion while they're here? Right, hearing nothing. We might be able to wrap up a little bit early
Marika,
today.
Marika, can I just get like one thing people can do is go to the backlog page and review it as well, because that's something that it may trigger some latent need there. Because there's quite a few deferred items. So there's things like that have been raised in the past. So whether those things are still a priority to someone is probably the question.
Thanks, Brett. I've just popped
Yeah.
the link to the backlog page in the chat.
I'll meet you.
So yeah, that would be something that would be great if people could have a quick look and flag anything that is still a priority. All right. Anything else that we're thinking about? Oh, and then I've very quickly. Excellent. Anything else from anyone else for the R7 discussion while we're here?
So I guess what's the process moving forward with these things? So these topics? Is it just preparing and putting something on the agenda? Is that?
That's my understanding. Brett, Danielle, yep. So preparing something on the agenda, bringing it to us to discuss.
Squeaky wheels, get action. So it's I think obviously if you want to move something along, get it contact
Raise a
co-chairs,
JIRA.
you raise a JIRA, talk to the co-chairs about getting it into a discussion.
So let's just confirm that. So you can either raise a JIRA initially, or you can post in the relevant Zulip topic. There is one for AU base, and ask a question about that. Once you have a JIRA or a topic, you can do one of a couple of things. One, you can also say, I want to add this to the next agenda you can still comment on Zulip in that. We have an AU FHIR Work Group topic there. You can also probably do it in base, but the best one is the AU FHIR Work Group topic, and the co-chairs will add that to the agenda. You can reach out to a co-chair directly. You can use, I'm about to put the email in the chat. There's a fireworkgroup at hl7.com.au, which is the mailing list for the co-chairs. So you can organize it that way. And the expectation, is if this is a priority for you / the project that you're representing, that you are coordinating, I guess, what's happening and what the proposed design is to bring to this group.
Perfect. Really good summary. Sorry, was that you, Heath?
Yes, just I said okay. Thank you.
And we have a timeline, of course. So the expectation for AU base, which Brett, I think you're doing the next PSS for R7, which we should do really soon, is to go into the next ballot cycle, which is the kind of like the September this year cycle. So anything that's new or changed needs to go through that process of being brought to the group, discussed, revised, go through then an agreement to go to at least AFMM1 so that we can put it into ballot by the September ballot. So I guess that gives people, 4 months? Which is maybe 8 calls. So there's only, there's only a certain amount of calls available for us to go through the changes to fit into that cycle.
Just not a lot of the time in the scheme of things if you're chasing people, lead time between weeks, etc.
No, there's not.
So if you're interested in making a change to AU base, get a wriggle on. Alrighty. Sorry, there was someone, was that Brett or someone else?
I was just saying good advice.
All right, so we've already talked about our next meeting. We have not made any changes to the meeting time. It's going to stay 10 till 11:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. So it will mean that people coming off daylight savings, your meeting time will change a little bit. discussion of action items. I don't think that there were any action items coming out of this discussion that were pinned on particular people, other than if you're interested in something being part of R7, please contribute. Please make sure that you're reviewing the AE-based backlog or adding it to the project scoping page if it doesn't have a JIRA specifically. I think we will revisit. I think the only other action item is just revisiting the extensions from the R7 discussion and Buddy as well. Have I missed anything related to next meeting plans?
I wanted to ask
Uday.
can we bring through the what I think is the highest priority JIRA for voting, at least that one, which is what we do about the HPIO identifier profile and the PAIO identifier profile. It's basically like, what do we do about NOI?
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, if we could add those to the next agenda and send out some comms to who this will affect, which normatively will affect everybody. So core, EREC, patient summary, because it changes the AU core organization profile.
Sure, yeah.
Awesome. Yep. That's all I wanted to ask, if we could do that next meeting.
Great.
I just had one, and in response, Danielle's put some stuff about changes with some back-end changes at HL7 Australia. That is true. We're going onto Microsoft platform stuff, which will eventually lead us off Zoom and into Teams. But I'm going to run that through the co-chairs first and make sure everyone's happy, and we may even stagger that with some groups depending on what's happening. But hopefully, we'll get that in place. The mailing lists are getting cleaned up with the changeover as well. Andy's pinged me about the requesting one that will be available soon. At the moment, the plan is to not change the distribution list addresses. So the one Danielle's put there, FHIR Work Group, is actually the co-chairs. Actually, that's confusing. I won't say that. I'll put the plan together because we may have to change that as well. But I believe we'll be leaving we have a list called FHIR WG list, which is in fact everyone in the work group. And the one Danielle's got there, yes, is the co-chairs. So I think some of the other groups, there'll be some changes in place because there's new work groups being formed. There's a few changes, but I think for us, it's staying the same. So FHIR Work Group is the co-chairs group, and FHIR Work Group list, FHIR WG list is the general list. Danielle.
Did you just want to, I guess, update on the Confluence changes? Mostly, I guess, so the FHIR Work Group might see Confluence pages disappear as they move over to new spaces.
Yes. Yeah, true. In fact, the FHIR Work Group's just staying in place. So the FHIR Work Group content is where it has been always. But you'll notice the AU Core project and the e-requesting project will move into their own dedicated Confluence space. AU Core's already made the transition. E-requesting is yet to do so. So if you're looking for any of that material, it's actually in another HL7 workspace space rather. So you should be able to look that up. But we'll put things across. Oh, Andy, are you using it already?
Yes, we are.
Oh well, you better move the old stuff then.
Damn
Unless you don't want to.
No, we are.
Oh,
Michael
good.
Osborne has a task.
Oh, good. That makes it easy for me. Yeah, cool. So basically, yeah, the other work groups will be operating their own space, and there is a space as well for the terminology work group, which is the new group.
Great. Thanks for the update, Brett. Just, I guess everyone keep an eye out as things shift under our feet. Cool. So I think that is everything that we need to talk about today, so we can give everyone a little bit of time back.
Marika, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can, Stephen.
Sorry, if we have a bit of time, can I ask Heath a couple of clarification questions?
Is this starting to get into the solution for his
No,
particular?
I'm asking a couple of clarification questions about the dispense of about repeat authorization, but I can make the comment on the change request itself. I just thought that we have a bit of time
I mean,
here, so
if we've got a bit of time and an audience, I'm happy for you to ask questions.
okay.
If
So
he's
I thought
willing
that
to
we have
answer.
already finished the meeting. Okay, if not, then my apology.
I think we've got another 17 minutes by my count. Correct me if I'm wrong. Michael, we've finished all official business. It's just some clarifying questions from Stephen. So I'm happy for Stephen to, happy for those questions to be asked. But if people need to drop, this is
Sure.
bonus.
Heath, are you happy for me to ask you a couple of clarification questions now, or do you want me to put them in the change request?
I'm happy to entertain them. Whether I can answer them is another thing. But I mean, I can take them on board and then make sure that I've got appropriate people to answer them.
Okay, so the ticket is sort of with the heading is AU-based medication request, and you have a number of use cases. And one of the use cases is record a new repeat authorization as part of a dispense, and then the AU-based usage. You have the first bullet point is to differentiate an original prescription request and a repeat authorization request by community pharmacies. So I am a bit unclear as to whether or not you are actually advocating a new resource called repeat authorization, or you are actually requesting for an extension called number of times already dispensed to be included in the medication request resource or profile. So I just want to be clear about what actually the request is.
So it is guidance on how to use a medication request resource to represent a repeat authorization, how to distinguish that from the original prescription from the prescriber. And it is distinct from the record of the medication dispense itself. So when a supply is done, the medication dispense resource will represent that event of the dispense occurring, and when there's a repeat authorization for the next supply, that will actually be an additional medication request resource instance that links back to the original. So it's based on the original, but it is actually the new authorization for the next supply. And in that next supply, if you look at your piece of paper that we get with repeats at the moment, there is a field that represents the number of times already dispensed, including the original supply. And that's an essential piece of information to carry forward to the next supply dispense, so that the pharmacy knows how many of these repeat authorizations have actually been supplied, and to basically build the chain of supplies going forward. Now, this appears to be very much an Australian sort of process that we have with these repeat authorizations. So it's not inherent in, I guess, FHIR because of of the, I guess, the workflows around prescribing in the United States and probably other countries. But I'm also seeing now, I've put in there a new use case around med charts in nursing homes. So the way that those charts are managed is a more traditional approach where all dispensers go against the original request, that they don't have these repeat authorization requests that need to be issued when you go to a community pharmacy. So I guess it's that kind of guidance that I'm looking to include. Not so there is certainly a need. We already have an extension in medication dispense for the supply number. So the question is, can we reuse that existing extension as part of a medication request when it's representing a repeat authorization, or whether we need a new extension? So it's all those sorts of issues that I would like to get some clarity and agreement on going forward.
So it's basically that. So I've got a question. So basically on that repeat authorization, that's usually a pharmacy repeat authorization getting generated at time of a dispense.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the paper world, it's a piece of yellow colored paper, or not wholly yellow color paper, a piece of paper with the sort of yellow kind of boxes.
The yellow is not coming up.
The yellow is coming up. Now.
That makes sense.
So
and the original is right sitting behind there.
Stop doing that. Stop it.
So the question.
Stop it. Brett might have to edit this video. Don't show actual stuff.
The question is whether you should be including suppliers in a repeat authorization or not at all, because it's not a record of. It's a record of information you have, but it's not necessarily...
For the repeat authorization, is that piece of paper, it does include sort of a number of dispense and also number of sort of dispense remaining. So those two pieces of information are in there. Whether or not those two pieces would need to be included in this new change request that Heath has put forward, we can discuss about that. But Heath, on that note of the first bullet point of our guidance on the intent code to differentiate between the original prescription and also a repeat authorization, I've made a change request to medication request R6 to change to change one of I'll change one of the element called reported into rename it into is a record of. So I don't know whether or not that sort of actually meets the requirement, or we still need to have an intent code to sort of give a bit more clarity, so we can sort of discuss that further. But I thought that I will mention this to you as well.
Okay, I'll probably need to get more information about that. Suggesting, but obviously we're working in the context of R4. But yes, if that's the preferred approach, then we can look at using sort of extensions like R6 extensions. But
I'll put the links to the changes in R6 sort of in this change request, so therefore we can have something to start with.
Yeah, I think some guidance would be very helpful, because like another approach, because you already put how many supplies you have authorized right in the first place in the original. So when you do the repeat authorization, you've essentially got one less supply available, right? So but you don't have a reference to what the original number of supplies was.
So
I think there's different ways to do it. So that's good to.
I originally want to make the changes in the medication dispense itself to make it sort of like to use as a repeat authorization as well. But I haven't progressed that discussion further with the HO7 International Pharmacy Group. But if there is a preference from Australian perspective to repurpose the medication request resource for that kind of purposes. I think we can discuss it further, and then we can kind of take the idea back to HL7 International as well.
Well,
I forgot you were co-chair, Stephen, of the
I am a
pharmacy.
co-chair. I'm one of the
Yeah.
co-chairs. So that's the reason why I said that
Cool.
I will take this back to HL7 International Pharmacy.
Cool.
And one of the requirements is to be able to query this, obviously. So we need to be able to distinguish those original requests from the repeat authorizations, because from a clinician's perspective, like in a primary care environment, they don't care about the repeat authorizations. They just care about the original and the dispense records. So that's why it's really necessary to have a way to clearly distinguish between the two. And but the knowledge, and that's where that leads into the third dot point, which is around, okay, what's the status of that original as we move through the dispensing status or the dispensing processes, and currently we don't know. So what's the status of a medication request, original request, when you have absolutely no knowledge of the dispensing status of that request?
Yeah, look, if you have no knowledge of the dispense status, then it will remain active until such a time that the script expires. So that's the kind of a logical workflow.
So it's that kind of guidance that I would love to get basically included.
Yeah, originally I have asked for a dispense authorization resource to be created, and I got a significant pushback from the HL7 International. So probably not worth pursuing that again further. I think we probably would be useful to get those kind of thing in agreement within Australia, so therefore we can reflect it to the HL7 International Pharmacy Work Group. So from the medication prescription status, from the repeat kind of with the number of repeat sort of purposes, you remain active until such a time that all the repeats are being dispensed, or if there's no history of repeat or dispense available, it will remain active until such a time that the script is legally expired, which in Australia is about 12 months. So that's kind of the kind of thing that we can consider, but we'll discuss that sort of in future conversations.
Yeah, that's very much aligned with what I'm hoping that we can get agreement on. Although I'm a little bit worried about the expiry. Obviously, that's that's a passive thing, and so it's a little bit challenging, I guess, from that perspective to determine whether something is actually expired, whose responsibility is to actually do that.
Yeah, but that expiry thing is determined by the sort of a legal requirement. So something that we can't change. Anyway, thank you for the extra time. I appreciate the discussion, and so we can then sort of move forward with further discussions so when the topic comes up again.
Yeah. And one last comment on the expiry. I mean, I understand the legal requirement and it all makes sense, but if you've got these resources stored in a FHIR server, how does that magically turn into a completed or expired status or whatever the appropriate status is? For facades, obviously there's some business logic that can be applied, but for more passive FHIR repositories, I think that's going to be challenging. So again, some guidance around that would be awesome.
Yeah, is this for requests, Heath, changing the status?
Yeah.
I don't think you should. I think these are events. And it's all.
I agree. We've gone through this.
Yeah.
I think we need to make sure that this kind of process can also be used within service requesting as well, not just medication requesting, because we have the same issues with Rule 3 exemption.
Yeah, because I think it's as an event record, these are all things that authorization is given at a specific time, and it is what it is. So unless the original thing actually changes, I find it really hard to manage like that
We also
globally would be.
we also don't want to be enacting the policy. We want to be
Yeah.
want to be providing it, but the mechanism and what you do with it is a whole other ball of pain.
Yeah,
I mean, the rules could
regu-
change, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when regulation and policy intersect, it sort of with technology is always going to be difficult. But sort of that the regulations and policies dictates that there is a expiry date for the request. Usually stands at sort of 12 months, like a referral as a service request. You have to get a new referral sort of after 12 months, unless the referral is being flagged initially as open-ended. So there are those kind of policy and regulatory type of requirements that will intersect with technology, and that needs to be carefully considered and also managed.
Hence why I'm looking for guidance.
Yeah, it sounds like getting something in paper will be really useful. I'm just conscious of time, so I want to thank everyone for their input today. And thank you for the people who have volunteered to bring forward items to discuss in the upcoming FHIR Working Group meetings. Everyone has a great rest of the day and look forward to more productive discussions.
Thanks, Marika.
Thanks, Marika.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Marika.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thanks, everyone.